First off, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for showing up for T writ large, and in particular in tonight. Fundamentally, we're here for the kids. We're here for your kids, right? Trying to navigate our path forward, right? And I really appreciate the partnership, and I hope tonight we can lean into a bunch of folks' questions and everything else. I'll speak to that in just a minute. This is certainly a significant moment for T. We've been through lots of significant moments in the past, right? Young institution, 15 years old, there are some jigs and jags along the path, right? And this is one of them. That said, as our families, you certainly deserve as much clarity and honesty and sort of back and forth dialogue, right, as we can manage, right? And we're grateful for that and for that opportunity. I really appreciated all the questions that folks submitted in advance. Some number of them we knew about, some number of them we didn't, right? We're going to try and address the vast majority of those questions, both in our sort of talking points in the formal part of this, and then at the beginning of the Q&A, we'll answer a couple more, right? I want to make sure there's time for live questions here in the audience. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the projector going. We will do a post that has a link to another survey where you can add on further questions or things you want more clarification on, including let me know, and I'll reach out to you personally. So we're trying to address all that, but it was a large body of questions, so I'm not sure we'll get to absolutely everything. My assignment as interim head of school has been to be a steward, right? To steward this institution through an inflection point, through a challenging moment and challenging times. And, I came here, and my charter was to sort of stabilize the institution, set up the next chapter for success, right? And I certainly have experienced this as a community that is hardworking, that is deeply vested in the mission, right? That is values-based, right? Even when the work is hard, even when the moment is challenging, right? And I really am impressed, and I really appreciate that. One of my mandates was certainly to, find our way to a balanced and, viable fiscal model for the institution. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now, right? We simply must adjust the structure of the school. There is no optionality, right? We just need to do that, right? And we're going to speak to what that means and a bunch of the details around that tonight. But maybe not all of them. This is in process, right? It's just simply not possible to have granular answers to all the questions. That doesn't mean we don't want to know what they are, and we don't want to collect that and keep going, right? And trying to address that. And I just want to take a moment to recognize that when you engage in significant change, there are significant impacts. There are peoples whose role disappear, right? Those are profoundly hard conversations. These are folks who have poured their heart and soul into this place, into your kids. We owe them a lot of appreciation. We owe them a lot of deference as we work through that process, right? We're well through it, but not done. Still having lots of ongoing conversations as we, there's a lot of conditionalities about what's related to what and how might we structure things that are actually dependent on the amazing, wonderful people who are here, right? And taking full advantage of their skills and talents. And I wanted to address a couple specific questions that we got, and then I'll hand it over, right? One of the questions was certainly about staffing, in particular about without a dean of students and a school counselor, right? What's the system? How are we going to deal with and support students' social, emotionally, social needs? I certainly want to acknowledge that this is a real question, right? That this is a real challenge. A school, of our scale is challenged to meet the need as we would like to in those areas of lots of different services, right? We're always challenged by these things. We certainly are pretty deep into thinking about what might be some paths through that, right? It certainly is about an expanded and sort of reconfigured student support team within the school, right, to make sure we're identifying issues and challenges and doing what we can to provide direct support. It certainly involves taking advantage of, taking advantage of the talents of our faculty, right? And providing them some professional development in those domains, right? We certainly are already down the road of exploring whether we can have, interns and folks who are working towards counseling degrees and that kind of thing. We are blessed to have someone Katie Watts on faculty who can supervise folks in the domain of school counseling, right? Is approved and certified to do so. We've reached out to a bunch of institutions already. We just need to keep working the problem. There are a handful of challenges that have already been identified, right? And this is one of them that we need to keep working to address. What are the current enrollment numbers? Can you provide a breakdown by class, lower school, middle school, and upper school? So bluntly put, we have 50 families that are not confirmed as of today, right? And in the last 5 days, our sort of estimation of enrollment for next year has fluctuated between 160 and 164, okay? We've based all of our modeling on 160, 161 as sort of the number you'll hear most frequently. I want to remind you that these are predictions, right? We're probability weighting, of this group of people who said yes in January with a letter of intent, but as of yet have not completed a deposit. If 75% of them end up enrolling, plus we get 30 new students, which is a realistic expectation, we're both on track for that number, and that would be lower than historic averages, so it's not a crazy number. So with conservative estimates, we end up with that. Obviously, we have to distribute those probabilities across grades, and that is more art than science. Okay. In any case, when you do the math, right, it's something like 12 students per grade, school-wide average. Okay, with a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 20. Okay, and I'll go a little more granular. But that certainly explains why we need to consider combined classes in some areas where we have adjacent low enrollment, right, in grade levels. And we'll speak more to that specifically a little bit later. And obviously, we want to make sure that we have a social environment that has a certain amount of vitality to it. Right, and makes if need be, let's combine crews and go together on field studies, right? And sometimes that's appropriate, sometimes that's not, and we'll have to work that puzzle back and forth. It's quite different, lower school versus middle school versus upper school. Okay, and in the lower school, we're expecting something like 51 students. K-5, it'll be about an average per 9 per grade, right? But that is not evenly distributed. Those 9, which is part of the challenge and part of the uncertainty that lots of people have identified. Like, how many kids in this grade? What about that grade? That's coming from that reality that there's a lot of variability there. The middle school is about 41 or estimating about 41 students, about 13 per grade. Upper school, 56 students, about 14 students per grade. Right? Obviously a lot less in 9th and a fairly full class in 12th. Right? So not an even distribution. So another question, why are families leaving T? And how are we going to address those concerns? We have a large senior class graduating. Okay, we are definitely in an environment of significantly changed demographics nationally, statewide, regionally, and locally, right, in terms of the number of school-age children available. Right? It is hard to tease out some of the specifics of that, but that demographic shift is absolutely real, right? Certainly we have experienced a handful of families that it's back to the office, right? Parents have to move for work, right? And that precludes them staying here local to T, right? And incurs a school change. We certainly have families who concerns around grade size and class size and social, the social size is a concern and has them hesitating. That's certainly a factor, especially in 8th to 9th, right? It's a changed world in terms of adolescents' perspective about what's a viable class size in terms of social viability and vitality. And that's something that we need to work on. And last couple here. We certainly have heard expressed concerns around rigor, right? And we also had a tough couple years in the middle school, and we broke the faith with some number of families, right, who got frustrated and ultimately made choices to depart. So all of those things add up. right? And we add up in part to a confidence challenge, which is what we're addressing, and we need to have a more stable foundation to stand on. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Hayes, and we'll keep going.
Hi there. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Hayes Parziebach, Vice Chair of the Board, and wanted to sort of sit before you today and also state that I'm a parent and part of this community, in addition to being a board member, so sort of wearing a few hats today. My family, Katie and I, have chose this school in part because of the impact we feel that it will have on our children, has had and will have on our children, and also the opportunity to be engaged in a community. I would say that if we were looking for the easy button, that probably wouldn't be here. But I think we all are engaging with that opportunity, and I think folks are showing up in new ways every day, and we're entering a new time where I think engagement at the parent level throughout the organization is going to be crucial, and something that I really welcome, and I think will be really powerful to the organization going forward with a greater level of buy-in, greater level of investment, et cetera. Let me touch on the strategic restructuring for a moment. The enrollment piece becomes a headline often, but really it's important, but it's also not the driving force. I think it's important to understand that what we are doing here, embarking on this sort of new phase of T, is really a fundamental shift in how we've conducted business, and making sure that we are on an annual basis over the long term getting to a place where we have a sustainable business model and school model. And I think that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle when we're talking about enrollment numbers. But I think I really want to emphasize that, because it's definitely a paradigm shift in how we are looking at the year-over-year fiscal health of the school. And a key component of that is the fundraising piece. In the past, we've basically solved for whatever annual fund fills the operating deficit. And that peaked out somewhere in the $2.5 million range. This year we're like 1.5 million. Half of that's at the upcoming gala, which is a critical piece to hit, and we need everybody's support at that event as well. But where we're headed in this upcoming fiscal year is to half or better that goal to a $750,000 amount for the entire annual fund, and the goal would be in the following year to stabilize around a $500,000 annual fund, which would then open the door for us to, when we can reach higher than that $500,000, we can start putting dollars towards the future of T, whether that's permanent facilities through capital campaigns, building the endowment further, et cetera. And I think that is, at a really high level, one of the key focuses that the board has shifted this year as we go into this next phase. And so I would ask that all of this is sort of anchored in that fundamental shift as we move forward. The other piece that I think is really a focus, and there's probably others that may be able to articulate this better than me, but the way that I think about it is we really are going back to a faculty and teacher-centric model, and we're getting to a place where we're looking at, excuse the term, but like an educational delivery system to ensure that the teachers and the student experience is at the center of everything that we do, and all of the other roles and responsibilities around that, whether it's head of school, volunteers, et cetera, is in support of that delivery system and that sort of strategic goal. And I want to highlight that because I think that T, perhaps a number of years ago really really did that well, and we're getting back to that place where I think it's. I've already had just in the last month just tenfold the number of engagement with teachers that I had in the first 6 months of my tenure on the board. And I think that's the kind of dialogue and engagement that we need with this next phase of the school. I want to touch on the head of school transition as well. Some people might ask, well, gosh, there's a lot of changes here. Why a change of the head of school position right now? I think it's important to note that as the board looked to the future, there was some really key reasons why we felt this decision was timely. And the first part of that is back to what I just said, having the next head of school be extremely in lockstep with that goal of a teacher and student focused, teacher and student centric, focus as we move forward. We feel like Jessa is the right person for that focus and for the next phase of the school. And that's not taking anything away from Christopher. As Christopher mentioned earlier, his role here as an interim was very much, kind of business office heavy and focusing on how do we get to this next phase to get T to be an institution of permanence. And I think his contributions have been immense. He's not going away. He's staying here through the end of the fiscal year, and he's graciously offered to continue to engage with T as a strategic advisor and a sounding board for Jessa and the board going forward. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Tori to speak a little bit about Jessa and what she brings to T.
Thank you. Hayes is my better half on the board of trustees.
No.
To reiterate a little bit about what Hayes said, we are so very grateful for Christopher, but the board is quite confident in an early transition. Oh, thank you. A little bit of an early transition from Christopher to Jessa as our head of school. T is ready for stability and momentum, continuing with an interim and or a head of school search process. Thank you, Mia, for your past efforts. Did not make a whole lot of sense to the Board of Trustees when we knew we had such a strong leader in Jessa Marino in the school. Jessa knows our community deeply. She's been doing the work already by helping to create our curriculum. She supports our faculty, and she contributes and has contributed over the last few years to the direction of the school. She not only understands T and how it's run from the day to day, but she also knows who T is and who T is becoming. Jessa is also recognized nationally as an emerging school leader and brings perspective on education that is full of academic integrity and academic rigor. Importantly, Jessa is a builder, someone who has helped start, scale, and sustain organizations and schools much like T. She leads with steadiness and calm demeanor and care to all of those around her. She has a clear sense of purpose, especially in challenging times like we're facing. At this moment, T needs someone who believes in us and believes in our mission, and can do that without pause. And so the board wholeheartedly endorses Jessa, and we very much look forward to our future. So, thank you.
Wait. Appreciate that. I'm going to grab someone's mic. Wow, thanks. This is an interesting moment to step into this role, right? It's not necessarily the moment any of us wanted to find ourselves in with declining enrollment or any of those things. But as Tori has said, this is actually the place where I've done the most work. So most of you know me as, your kid's teacher or a colleague or a friend or a parent or your parent. But before I came here, I had been doing 20 years of educational leadership. And I did not see it as a step back into the classroom. After 10 years of being out of the classroom, when I came here to teach your students, I saw T as the school that when I looked around and saw schools nationally, worked with schools nationally and across our state, this was the place I wanted to be pedagogically and believed in. This is the place I wanted my kid to be. So I came, right? We moved here for that reason. As I got here, then the magic of it actually unfolded, right? Because you can see an institution from the outside and think it's one thing. And I just come with a lot of confidence to say to you, from the inside, for my family, it's even better, right? What I see our kids do in the field, what you all in the upper school don't get to see a lot of, lower school you still see it, is just how tremendous that work is, right? My kid came here as an amazing artist, and now she's also an athlete and also a scholar, right? We create those well-rounded kids of character, and we see it just time and time again in all of our students. Today's a hard moment. I have people really dear to me who are really impacted, sorry for the mic, by this moment in ways that hurt, right? And so I asked myself, as we do, to go to the character traits we tell our students that they have to live into and deal with adversity and find a way forward. And I personally think back in those moments to, okay, what have I done that's really, really hard, that felt absolutely impossible? And this morning when I was thinking about what can I possibly say in this bittersweet time, but also with the optimism I do have for the future of this school. And I thought back to last year where I got the hike to the Nepali Coast just around this time last year. And it was a terrible hike. Has anyone been on that hike? I got a late start. And so by the time I was hitting dark, it was torrential rains, it was mud, it was a mess. It was a very, very hard hike. A wild boar came across my path. It sucked. I ended up putting my tent down in the middle of the trail just to do it because I couldn't find any other place. And in the middle of the night, when I was miserable and I felt like I should probably turn back the next day, I got out of my tent as you do at midnight, and I looked out and I saw a moonbow. I don't know if anyone's seen a moonbow. It's not the halo around it. It's like actually a rainbow made by a full moon across the water. And that was the total unexpected moment in the journey that just made it absolutely worthwhile, right? It's the moment we tell our kids they're gonna get if they go on our trips. It's that thing that you cannot expect when you're in the midst of the hardest thing ever, right? And then the next day I knew there was gonna be this technical hike. Does anyone know about the little thing you crawl across? Yes, crawler's ledge, they call it. So the technical part was still to come. But seeing that gave me enough hope to just, get up in the next day and try the technical part. And I am, very clear that the technical part is still ahead of us. We are kind of dealing with the dark, and we're dealing with, wild boars at the door. Sometimes it might feel that way. And that little piece still has to happen, the way that we're going to work together on finances, on the future of the school, on visioning to being on land that we can build on and build towards, a place that our kids and our grandkids can go. That's to come, and I know that this is a hard moment. So we're just going to take the technical climb, and I'm really good at that moment. That's my favorite moment. It sucks, but it's also my favorite moment, and I've, as Tori said, shepherded a lot of institutions through that. That's what my organization used to come in at those moments of change in educational spaces. So the next little while here, I am going to be, in my same role for the next 2 months, but also I would love to do a lot of listening. So please, 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 I have a goal of meeting with as many families, faculty, staff, students, one-on-one, or as a group, as a family, as I can in those 2 months. That's going to be the most important part of my onboarding, is to find out what you love about the school, what's keeping you here, why you showed up again and again, and tonight, what you want to make sure is in the future of the school, and then also what still needs to change from your vantage point, right? So I look forward to those, and I want to get us to Q&A, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Sorry. I think while I came here with an expectation of a certain arc and a certain tenure, as we work through all of this, it was self-evident to me, right, that part of the solve, part of the solution in trying to figure out what's the right path forward was Jessup, right? It was a foreshortening of the interim's term. And the reason that I believe that is as soon as we can get to somebody who's of this community, who's of this place and region, right, who understands and values the fundamental, values of T, right, and is here for the long term, right, which was never my situation, right, the better for T, right? And it's just been a profound opportunity for me to be of service to this community and the board, right? And I look forward to continuing to be of service, right? So it's what I call with my kids one of those happy, sad moments, right? Where you're happy for the journey ahead and you're sad for what's going to be lost, right? And I've so appreciated all of my engagement with everybody here. I'm going to set up a little bit about the Q&A. One, there was supposed to be a projector. I couldn't quite get it working. We will send you a link to a survey, right? Or afterwards, I'll put it up on the screen of my laptop, and you can snap the QR code, which is what was going to be on the screen. And it's a way to follow up. If you didn't feel like you wanted to ask a question, or you want to ruminate and think about it, or you have a follow-up question, we want to keep capturing that information. It's really an opportunity to tell us what are your concerns, but also what are your hopes and dreams, right? Fundamentally, I am deeply optimistic about the path forward. I don't think it's easy. I think it's a technical climb, right? But not only is it clear to me that it can be done, it's even clearer to me that it must be done, right? So we're going to answer a couple more of the questions we got remotely, because I think they're helpful, and I'm sure people have these questions, and then we're going to open it up from there. Hayes, you want me to read your question, or you can read the question yourself?
Can you help me on which one we're jumping
What
into?
financial gaps are these changes addressing, and is the school financially stable moving forward?
Yeah, fair enough. I think, as I said before, I think one of the key pieces that was just difficult, if not impossible, to sustain is, a annual fundraising goal that has us, just trying to keep our nose above water. And so I think that is a key component. Also getting to a model that allows us to be on offense, quite frankly, going forward. I think I've used the analogy before, if every year we're buying a bigger backpack and we end up filling it every year, pretty soon we can't carry it anymore. And so I think getting to a model where we can do what we do really well and not necessarily try to be all things to all people, but really be intentional about who we are, what we want to deliver, and how we progress and improve year over year, and start to be in a position where we are on the forefoot, I think, is a critical piece. Doing that obviously requires us to close an operating gap and start to be in a position where both the internal community and the external community believe that we are an institution of permanence. And to do that, we have to, get into permanent facilities, get into, the business of starting to build an endowment that starts to help, again, reduce that operating deficit year over year. We'd probably be it would be ingenuine to say, or disingenuous to say, that we would close an operating gap in the next few years completely. But the goal is to get to a place where if we're at let's say 175 to 180 students, then all of a sudden there's no drawdown on the reserves, and we are at a much more stable annual fund budget year over year, and again, to be progressing towards capital improvements and building endowment. Did I cover everything I'm supposed to?
You did, but I just want to clarify, and this is a terminology issue, because
Yes.
I know we call the annual giving campaign part of how we fundraise and the gala the other. I just want to clarify and confirm that what we are moving towards is a model where the total fundraising, so combining those, is significantly less. So next year being half of what our total was this year, with a goal of moving towards something closer to $500,000 a year for operating. So the goal is to keep our revenue from net tuition closer to our operating expenses, so that the only gap we're filling is a very modest $500,000 gap, rather than, as Hayes explained, the gaps we've had in recent years that were up to $2.5 million, which is just not sustainable, and doesn't allow for that forward growth that Hayes just spoke of.
There's great data in schools about what percentage they fundraise for annual operating, and 10% is healthy. $5 million business, $500,000, right? That's like the magnitude plus or minus, right? So this is based on not both our numbers and our reality, but also testing it against, like, what's the world out there? What have they discovered and found? What we know and we have learned that 25 to 30% is unsustainable. Right? It's not something that's got legs for the long term. And the next one's you two.
Do you want to tee me up with the question?
How will the lower school be structured next year?
Wow, that's a good one. Okay, so to be fair, I'm going to wear a little bit of board hat, a little bit of parent hat here. I've got a rising 5th grader, rising 7th grader, and so some of these questions are very, germane to our family as well. And so I guess please know that I share the questions and have been talking quite a bit to the lower school co-leader team, and which I think DC, Rosie, Maud, and Colleen. And also we have Katie and Brenda, I believe, as support crew there, which also very engaged as we proceed and supporting that growth. But what I wanted to do is I didn't want to come up and sort of try to arm wave an answer to this. And so I went to the experts and I said, can you guys help me sort of answer this? And I think part of the answer is we don't fully know yet, partially because that enrollment question is not totally clear. And so some of this is going to need to be adaptively managed as enrollment gets more clarified. For example, for grades 4 and 5, you could potentially combine those, you could potentially not combine those. As projected, that would be like a 19 student class if we combined those, which is like right on the border of being like too large. And so I wanted to highlight that because that's important as it relates to this. But this is not from me, but from the experts. Mixed age groupings with 4 co-leaders will build a structure of targeted small group instruction, inclusive of student support teachers, Katie and Brenda, that meets students where they are in foundational skills of math, reading, and writing. Project work, science and social studies, character and adventure will be fully integrated with targeted team teaching. In a mixed age structure, we stop thinking K does this and First does that, and instead group kids by where they actually are. Reading groups, math centers, and project roles are all based on skill level. A single outdoor investigation or project can have entry points at multiple levels. Kindergartners might observe and draw, first graders might label, record data, or write sentences about the same thing. This structure will become clearer, and we will develop a better understanding of the structure of students at each grade level. We will also work toward a structure that plays to the strengths of each individual teacher, bringing the lower school and meet the needs of each student where they are. The model has been highly successful in this year's combined 2-3 crew, and we're looking to expand that, and targeted small group instruction has driven meaningful gains in student performance and testing results. Please.
Okay. Just want to add, and I'll yell into
Oh,
my phone.
sorry.
We also have and intend to retain our amazing art, math, and PE faculty, and we also will continue with the pre-K, which will still be standalone. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you.
Music, sorry.
Janice, can be math or
Math, music,
either way.
math's on my mind.
Courtney, can I ask you a question?
Can you ask? Sure.
What happens if the fundraiser? Oh, you done?
Before we leave
Yep.
that item, I think, that obviously leaves some questions still unanswered relative to, okay, is my kid going to be in a combined class or not? And I think as we gain clarity on that, we will be anxious to share that with the community so that people have combination. And from my family's perspective, I think I look at the group of teachers that we've got there, and I have a high comfort level that whatever structure we end up with is going to be really amazing. Next question.
Okay, you're done? Great. What happens if we don't make our fundraising goals at the gala? Will there be additional cuts or use of the reserves?
First of all, I really hope that doesn't happen. And I'll be crying. The bottom line is that while we are very excited about the transition to a new financial model, this year's budget and the expenses, thank you, sorry, I should have been paying attention. The expenses for this year, meaning the staff, the faculty, and all of the projects that we're doing this year are dependent on a fundraising goal of $1.5 million for the year. We raised the first half of that at the annual giving campaign. Thank you very much. And we really do hope to raise the other half of that at the gala. If we do that, then many more things about next year's plan fall into place. If that doesn't happen, the current plan is that we would dip further into the reserves as opposed to doing additional cuts, because we do believe that right now we are staffed at our, what is it called, minimal viable structure. I mean, we've spent a lot of time looking at the cuts that we've made and the positions that we've retained, and we don't want to do anything that further impacts our ability to deliver what you have signed up for your children, or will be shortly. But that does then put more pressure on us for future years. So the hope would be that we can raise the 750 and move forward with a plan that gives us 2 years of runway with reserves. So that's the answer.
I guess this one's for me. How and when will families be informed about remaining decisions, including staffing, enrollment, and program changes, so there are no surprises? We just have to keep looping with periodic updates, and I so strongly encourage people to reach out. If you have a question, probably somebody else does. You've noticed there's been some number of references of we may have narrowed the range of what the path forward is, but it's not totally resolved and clear. And it's, I want to keep having these discussions as we work through this over the next couple months. I will say, it's tricky. This chicken and egg routine tied to enrollment and everything else it makes it hard, right? And we will just keep persevering, right? I see the path through, but I just want to recognize that. And as soon as we can be declarative and clear, we will be. I'm really not trying to keep secrets or that kind of thing. I also want to make sure that we're not messaging things that turn out not to be true. Right? I don't want to be, I am fundamentally optimistic, right? But I don't want to be like pie in the sky or make promises that somehow that we can't meet, right? Personally, I like to underpromise and overdeliver. It's like my personal mantra, right? We're aware that through change is a time when you have to increase communications. You have to increase the pathways by which folks can do it. Although a lot of these things are really complicated. right? And I really would, I really appreciate those opportunities when in smaller groups so we can get a lot more granular. And I can show you spreadsheets if that's your thing, and show you numbers, and lean into that as we can. So with that, I want to make sure that we open it up for questions from the audience. We have about 15 minutes for the official timeline of this presentation, but obviously I'm happy to stay as long as it takes, et cetera. And I will just field them and maybe pass on some of the questions, everything else, and go from there. Somebody want to kick us off?
So one of the reasons we picked this school was the robust social emotional.
Yep.
And having that attention from the dean of students and the counselors.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my children are now in middle school, going into high school, and so that worries me a little bit.
Sure.
We're not going to have that in place officially.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers are all wonderful. I'm just curious what the overall intention. I mean, middle school and high school is a huge time of social emotional change for
Yeah.
kids. And so not having that support in the upper school is a little concerning to me. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I mean, fundamentally, we have to rethink our structure. Sorry, say again? Oh,
You have a microphone.
Can you give him?
no, I haven't. Oh, do you want me to? I'll just repeat this question, and then I'm happy to walk around with the mic. It was a follow-up question with regards to, in particular in the middle and upper school, with regards to social emotional support, both formally, and informally. We absolutely have to lean into thinking differently about student support teams and structures, how we allocate that. Certainly, there is we do have to push, we have to push some challenges that are, below the line, whatever that is, back into the classrooms, into teaching teams, right? And we also have to make sure that we're providing structures for things that are above this sort of artificial line, so to speak. The core strategy always has been, always will be, right, a trusted adult in the community, and we have an awful lot of them, right? And we may have to think different about, what we're pushing back to families in terms of the level of support. In the same way we do in learning support, there is lots we can do, and there are limits. And us being clear about those limits, right, is part of trying to solve this challenging piece. I think this is something that will actually take us a year or two, right, to truly get to the right best place, right, and recognize that it's where we are, right, and this is one of those tough challenges that we're working through.
Yeah, and I think too, I'd say that this isn't a we hear you but we're moving on thing. This is a we hear you and we share the concern, and we got to figure out what that looks like for next year, and it will be addressed in a robust way.
I would just piggyback that the neurodivergent population also suffers greatly here. So it's my understanding from talking with individual trustees that this is going to be taken pretty seriously and is in motion. So I just put a little holler out for that population and making sure that we're being really mindful that we are not doing them a disservice.
Agreed. Thank you.
And I'll just keep asking you to please, as again, in the listening I do, please keep bringing that one forward in particular, because please do. Thank you.
Would you mind repeating that for the people on Zoom?
Oh.
I didn't hear fully what she said.
Absolutely. So, do you want me to?
I was just piggybacking off of the comment from the woman before me and saying that I would just put a plug in for the neurodivergent population here at this school. And it is my understanding from conversations with individual trustees that this is being taken very seriously. And I just want to, from a parent perspective, make sure that we're continuing to center that population.
So my son is a senior. This is going to be a senior, and still a large class size. With the dean of students being gone, they have historically played a huge role in supporting the senior class in their field studies and everything. So how is it going to be communicated to the parents and the community, and how they can step in to support what's going to be a huge gap for a large class?
So there's two parts to your answer. First of all, we absolutely anticipate and are actually hopeful and excited about the large number of roles that will become available for parents to help the school to really go back to sort of the way we started, with parents pretty much doing everything other than direct teaching. And so we are excited to work on that over the summer and actually hopefully start the school year with a variety of roles that parents can sign up for. Hey, I'm available once a week to do lunch duty, or I'm available to help because I've got a marketing background, or I'd love to help on tours, or I'd love to put on an event, a community event. So we really do anticipate having many more structured opportunities for parents to step forward and get involved. When you speak specifically about the seniors, actually, I usually support the senior events and the parents working through those events throughout the year, and I will continue to do that next year. And then when it comes to OSIC responsibilities, which is what Chloe especially did this year for our seniors that were traveling, we will definitely be providing OSIC responsibilities and sharing those around our faculty and staff. So does that respond to your question?
Kind of. I know Chloe did a ton, because those seniors were extremely grateful to her at the capstone. So
Absolutely, and there really aren't words to describe the amazing human beings that aren't going to be with us next year, and we're all going to have to work together collectively to try to fill those gaps.
Could you expand on what you understand to have been the historical shortcomings within the middle school, and what steps are being considered to address those? So both, what you understand to have been the issues in the past, and what's the...
Yeah, sure. Well, I came here 2 years ago, so not really knowing what was taking place as a co-teacher, right? So I understand that the way that we had, I'll just go to the T promise, right? It wasn't being addressed. It wasn't happening. That wasn't what families' experiences of it were, and that was being named again and again, and then finally was addressed in one way in terms of staff changes. In this moment, we're continuing to look at, we are going to have a streamlined high school, middle school experience together. So we're going to look at the strengths, not dissimilar to the lower school, and see where our faculty strengths lie, reassess that master calendar from that perspective, and we're going to have to tighten in some ways and really just put people where their strengths are. That may mean that 6th, 7th, and 8th look a little bit different next year. So you don't necessarily have the same teachers teaching as large a block of time, for example, a little closer to high school, getting more faculty in the room. So one student's experience with one teacher doesn't necessarily dominate their entire experience of that time. That said, we have an amazing 6th grade teacher who's holding down really powerfully the work that's taking place in that class, and we don't want to mess with what's working either, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there are any ways students can aid in this transition, or if there are any expectations from student government or ways we could get involved.
Can I take this one too? Can I take the fun questions? Is that okay? Yes, please. And this was a conversation I got to have with the 9th graders. I made you all rehearse today, but the 9th graders also got immediately into dreaming big. So yes, absolutely. Let's have student involvement. There were ideas already from the 9th grade class about how they might help us with marketing through journalism. They might, have internships on campus. So our kids are innovative. This is actually why we're here. And so we want your talents, right? We believe that you also have so much to contribute in real ways right now to the real world. And we're going to need it. I'm going to need it.
Especially like Chloe not being there as kind of our spokesperson for student government, if there's just ways we can get involved or just let us know.
Okay. Yeah, and that'll also be in conversations with you all, what you think the best solutions are.
Thank you.
Yeah, because, we have irreplaceable people leaving our school. So we're going to have to really think and dream big.
Can I tag on that for a second? I think one of the things that for me, I haven't been a trustee for a full year yet, so still new kid on the block, parent third year, so relatively new there too. But one of the key things that I would say is a theme out of this process is that we've got to fundamentally do a better job of listening. And I think the way that we are structured going forward, there was just a lot of disconnects, like not a lot of conversations between faculty and the board, not a lot of conversations, from perhaps upper school to lower school, et cetera. I think those, just given that we're going to be a little bit smaller school and this intentionality around better communication, we're already talking about ways to better cross-pollinate and make sure that we are having more direct dialogue between everyone in the community so that we don't allow for, some of the things that Dave mentioned about just real issues that weren't getting addressed. And we've got to fix that. And so I'm committed to making sure that we start with the board and having conversations with the faculty, having a lot of open dialogue with the administration team that will be going forward. And I think that's a key piece that we're going to need. And having the integration of parents into the community in a more robust way, I think is going to also help facilitate that.
I can speak loudly. How do the teachers feel? I'd like to maybe hear a little bit from their perspective. We trust them, and I am so thankful for them. And I'd like to maybe hear something.
I think best answered by a teacher.
Hunter?
You hate to talk.
One, I actually want to go back and answer a question too about the support from a teacher's perspective. I think there's an opportunity here, and that's kind of going back to the fundamentals of crew, where the crew leader can play a much bigger role in a lot of these things, from behavioral to the academic support. When I started here, that was kind of the emphasis of crew. Like, one, your peers were the support network, and then the crew leader themselves was kind of served as almost a de facto dean and counselor for, I guess, the smaller issues, right? And I feel like we can go back to that model where the crew plays a bigger role, because the idea of the crew is such a fundamental concept with the school, right? And then in terms of how I feel right now about everything, obviously on a personal level, I've had some friends get laid off this week, right? And that sucks. But I know the importance of this school. I would not be here right now if I didn't think that. And I just, it's incredibly important for me that we get through this downturn and over this hump, because I do think this school is that important. I think that the teachers that are still here are incredibly bought in, and I'm, it feels rough right now, but I'm also incredibly excited for the future. Hearing that we're not going to be running at such a large, hearing the fundraising model changing is a vote of confidence for me, right? Like, I'm excited to hear that, and so yeah, it's bittersweet. I'm devastated that I lost a lot of my friends, but I am excited for the future.
Other teacher.
Thanks. So, you spoke about lower school,
Yes.
Upper school.
Yes.
Totally get that it's flux right now, who's signing their papers, who isn't, what the total enrollment's going to look like.
Sure.
If you had to wager, what do you think the core classes are going to look like both for the middle school and for the high school?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass that one off.
So right now we don't have an intention to lose core classes. Again, there might be spaces where we have the opportunity, if we have the small 9th grade class, to put them in groupings with the 10th, sometimes like we do with math, where you've got differentiated because different students are at different levels. It's going to have to look like that and should look like that, right, so that we get the social opportunities. We're not losing our A through G status. We're not losing our ability to have everything we need for your students to continue to have the kind of outcomes our seniors had this year. In terms of having those coursework, we're adding in this honors class. I'm going to continue to teach that class, even in this role, right? I think that's really important that I remain a faculty leader. Yeah, so I don't see that we're going to see a lot of changes there. We're attempting to really hang on to field work, right? There's a slight reduction in that, but that's alongside the reduction in students, so it shouldn't really impact our fieldwork program at this time. So I don't think you're going to see huge changes at that level. It's going to be something to navigate soon, but yeah.
Colleen, Rosie, DC, or Maud? Do any of you want to speak to the question about how our faculty are feeling? Thank you, Colleen.
On the spot.
I know, right? It's my favorite. Much of what Hunter said resonates with me wholeheartedly. We are in the business of relationships. We care deeply about our families. We care deeply about our colleagues. We care deeply, obviously, about our students in so many ways. So this has been an incredibly difficult time to experience. While that being said, watching how this has unfolded and speaking to those in positions of shifting things, I feel incredibly hopeful. That's a word that has continued to speak to me about the future, the direction, the excitement I think we even have in the lower school about trying something unique and different. So that feels really good to me, while at the same time I think we are all grappling with the emotion of this is an incredibly challenging moment for us. So I'm hopeful, and it's been hard.
Can I go? It's from Zoom.
What?
Our Zoom questions.
Oh, Zoom questions. Go ahead.
Gotta scroll up. As we think about the product T is putting out, what is the plan for empowering the teachers to help us navigate back to the original vision of the school? Between AI, current geopolitics, etc., T should be more relevant than ever, but it seems we're not actively articulating that relevance.
Sure, go for it.
I had a great conversation with a couple parents the other night, and talking about AI, what does it all mean for T and everything else. And one of the things we recognized is that there's a high likelihood that in the very near term, EQ is going to be more important than IQ. And we're in the EQ business. We're really good at this, right? And the ability to discern and evaluate information, right? To ask tough questions, right? To follow through on those things, to do your own independent research. These are all things that play to our strength. It doesn't mean we shouldn't use AI. It's a tool. It's like a hammer. We've got to figure out how to use it. We also want to make sure that we set appropriate boundaries around it, that kind of thing. In any case, I think there's an incredible opportunity, right, for us to sort of recenter to some of these core values, right? We have been stretched. When you're in an environment of declining enrollment, the temptation and the pressure to try to be a little bit extra, a little bit more, all things to all people is relentless, right? And this sort of rescaling and recentering allows us to rescale and recenter to the core, right? We should be an alternative to the regular thing, right? We're not in the business of like competing with free. We provide a different thing, right? And it should be clearly different, right? And I think there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm to use, our past history, all right, our past, sort of practices right? And sort of values, right, to inform this process. So we center around the right core, right? And I think from that comes an appropriate and really helpful differentiation. Most T families do not come here for the regular thing. They're looking for different, right? Now, it's sometimes a range of different, and that is a challenge, right? We've heard loud and clear this pressure between like double down on field studies. What about academic rigor, right? And sometimes those feel like a polarity that's tearing at us, but actually they're not, right? When you take students who've been here for a decade or more and you ask them to do something like a senior capstone, right? You end up in that place where you're like, well, actually, there's plenty of academic rigor, right? And when you look at the outcomes, right? Do the kids get into college? Yes. Do they get into the school of their choice? Yes. Do they get into the school of their choice that they and their family can afford? Yes, right? And is that a duly impressive list? Absolutely, right? We have to do a better job of messaging those things, right? But there is just a deep, profound opportunity here because baked into this place, right, is helping every single student become their best self. Right now, we're just in the process of T becoming its best self. So.
And I think part of that question was addressing like how are we going to change the public-facing, marketing component of that. And we are actively reviving some great work that the Board of Trustees or individuals from the trustees as well as parents have done in recent years, I guess like literally in the last year, reviving that and carrying it forward. And I think part of that is getting back to T defining who it is, what it's doing, and then being really proud and unapologetic about that. And not wavering from those key goals and really be diligent about the governance around that.
You've heard this before, but our marketing is us, primarily, right? Word of mouth is how people come to school. I came here because Brian Walpe was my mortgage broker, right? And said, you'd really like my wife. And you should check out the school. And so I did, checked it out for about 3 years and then came here. But that's exactly how everyone's story is. I mean, it's not all Brian, but it's a story like that. And it's also us feeling really good ourselves, right? The faculty feeling really good, the staff feeling really good, the students feeling really good, the families feeling really good, and then we just keep talking about it, right? I still shout every day about what my daughter's experiencing, and I mean every bit of it. So, and what my students, who my students are. They're incredible. We go out on field study, and everyone's like, who are these children? How do they know how to ask these questions? What's going on here? And that's consistent across all field studies with all teachers at all grades. So that's our best marketing, and we really need it. We really, really, really need it. So I'm going to plug that. That wasn't necessarily part of the Q&A, but as many of you who are having that good experience, like this is the moment to get us from that 160 to that 170 so that all of these things can happen.
Allie has more.
Okay. All right, we're going to do one more Zoom question here. What are the narratives and conversations being told to students, both in the lower school and the upper school as well?
Yep.
I have been assiduous in all the conversations I've been having with people and reminding everybody at the end of all those conversations that we owe our students a certain amount of shelter from all of this. Obviously, it's different kindergarten versus seniors, right? We certainly owe our students, an increased level of engagement in all of this and what it all means, right? But that's an important part of this process, right? It's supposed to be teacher and student centered, so at some point we would have to talk to the students. That said, a lot of what we're doing is this is a moment and a time for the adults at T to do hard things. Right? That's sort of where we are right this second, right? That doesn't mean there isn't a place for students to participate in that, especially envisioning where we go from here in our future, right? But a lot of this has been out of their domain and needs to stay there, right? Again, not from a secretive perspective, but it's not their problem to solve, right? It's mine, it's the board's, it's our community.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that. So especially for our older students, probably like middle schooler, high schoolers are dependent so much on the support staff.
Jeanine, can you start again?
Oh, yeah.
So just about that, because I actually agree with that in general, a lot of things happening in the world. But for our middle school and high school students who have depended so much on Chloe and Kristen, Andy and all of them, I do think they're grieving a bit, and we have to support them in that. So they have amazing teachers and relationships with them. That's really important. I don't know if everyone does, right? And so I just want to make sure that I'm also in the business of wellness and mental health and anyways, so just because oftentimes as counselors, you're not sharing each student who's struggling, and a lot of times the adults around them don't know. We need to make sure that those kids are okay, right? So there has to be that, and then just the general support that our kids have gotten. When you ask them why they love tea, it's the relationships. A lot of times it's their teachers. I can point to a bunch of them here, but it's also, the teachers that we know or the staff that we know isn't going to be here. So yes, protect about certain things, make them feel things are stable, but a lot of them, especially if they're older, they know what's going on, and we can't just pretend like nothing is going on. We need to make sure we are checking in and helping them with that goodbye of these people who are pretty impactful in their life. So that's all. Thank you. And thank you guys, first of all, you're all volunteers, not all of you. Thank you all so much. This is a really hard time, and so we are very grateful, and it's hard to be sitting up here and answering these questions, and all of you are parents also, so you're also feeling what we're feeling, and I just want to say a million times over, thank you to all of you. I can't imagine how exhausting and all the feelings you are having as well. So thank you.
Both my kids came home today and told me they knew everything. So just so you know.
Yeah.
Just so you know, they know. So it's not like.
Yeah.
I assure you they know lots of things, but not everything.
Oh, yeah. They knew everything besides the go God. So yeah, so please just make sure it's being, figure out how to talk to them. Because the rumors are also crazy.
Yeah.
The kids are spreading, so.
So the luxury of me being able to be in the classroom right now is, for example, in 9th grade, we just did a listening session already today. What do you want to know? I read, I shared any information that I have that I'm able to share with them, and then asked for all of their questions. And we basically did this in classroom. You guys had to rehearse yet again. Sorry. But yeah, so I think as many of our, especially with our upper school students and everywhere, right? You can always hold space, and all of our teachers do, for students to ask questions. It's not really getting at the second part of how are we holding students with more deep, the deep needs that they have. And so that is a real concerning question. And I won't say anything else about it, right? It's true.
Well, I was just going to add, as a parent, my kid's been here since I have one, right? Is that working? Hello? Can you hear me?
Great.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay. Cody's been coming here since pre-K. Miss Steph, Miss Rosie, Colleen, who spearheaded a double-headed class. Just for the people online. Oh, okay. A double-headed class. And we're so excited to get forward to Maud, to get forward to DC, to, just keep going forward. My son and I, it hasn't been the easiest 5 years, but he thrives here. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. And Miss Liz, and just all of it. For me, it's been a no-brainer to bring him back and to just contribute how you allow parents to. And so it's not a question or anything in my mind. It's more, how can we support you guys? And thanks. And yay, teachers. Thank you. Just a thanks. And sure, there's bumps, and that's life, right? But just thanks. That's what I've got.
Thank you. I will say, in part, an answer to parts of the big question. It's so wonderful to have an opportunity to step back, this school started as a community school, right? And the world has changed, times have changed, parenting, work-life balance, a whole variety of things have challenged that. COVID definitely challenged that. I mean, it physically severed the relationship, right? Not welcome on campus, right? And we're still on the journey back from that. And I assure you, the only path forward will involve significantly more parent engagement in a diverse set of ways. It's the only solve for some of these challenges, right? And I've seen so many folks give of themselves and of their time and everything else, and we have to get better at engaging with the expertise, right? And also just making the ask, right? I need somebody Monday through Friday every day at lunch to help with recess supervision, and in the library. And we need, just like we need people to help with the gala and all those other things. So I think that's actually a really positive step forward, because we actually want parents around more. I think it will actually weave us together, right? And yes, it's complicated and people are busy and we have to work through that. And, we have to shift from like who wants to volunteer to a little more voluntold, but that's okay. That'll be a great step forward.
The school I helped co-found before we came here, a K-8 school, had a large community involvement. So we had the mantra of a just do one thing kind of idea. Maybe you do a little more than that, but there's one main thing that is your domain as a family that you're fully committed to, and that draws on your strengths, just like we're looking to draw on our teachers' strengths. And that could be for one of our families that was really struggling. They were able to, bring one meal one time to one thing. Great. Wonderful, It doesn't have to be all of the things. And then if you can do a whole lot more, like you secretly have a math degree or a counseling degree, come talk to us, right? We're in a moment in some of these places. So yeah, just I encourage you to step forward, and that we are living in that model where it's all of us together, much, much more. Yep.
So I want to honor the time at 6:45. I think all of us are willing to stay and answer questions one-on-one or in a group and everything else. But I also really want to thank you all for taking the time to come and be here this evening, right? More than anything, I want to thank you all for entrusting us with your kids. We know this is a partnership. Raising kids is a journey, and it does take a village, right? And we love being part of that, right? So thank you for that. And I hope this is an inflection point, right? If you find yourself lacking sufficient clarity as to you trying to make decisions, come ask. I'll try and get you an answer. I will do my darndest to narrow down the range. But we really need folks to follow through with us. We need to know what enrollment is, right? We need folks to sign up for the gala, right? I look forward to learning how to rope with any of you who want to learn how to rope, right? Yeah, I'll leave it there. Any other? Hey, Tori, anything else? Closing comment? Oh no, got a mic.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks to the group on Zoom as well. I didn't say my background when I started talking. I'm Tori. This is my 11th year at T, and we have 3 children who have been raised by this faculty and this wonderful staff. For 11 years, they have gone from their home to their second home, 2 of them starting in the pre-K 3 program, and we intend to graduate all 3 of our children from T. So you are all a part of that. Thank you for being here. To Christopher's point, please join us at the gala. I have room at my table, sort of. I'll make room.
She overfills her table every year. So
Call me anyway. Just thank you. You're all family to my family, and appreciate you all.
Cheers. If you want up the survey, the QR code is going to be on the screen of this computer in 2 seconds. And we'll put it on there.
Lifesaver with this water bottle.
I know, right?